Alright, well, I just did this entire video, but I have to do it again because I didn't take into account the lighting behind me while filming myself. So, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough on the old Nucanoe Frontier 12. So I run a Frontier 12 because I want to be able to run a motorized boat. I've had a paddle kayak, I've had a pedal kayak. They're not bad, but let's be perfectly honest, I'd like to do as little as humanly possible while I'm out there besides fish. I also, up until the whole COVID thing and I lost my job, I had a really physical job, so it was very difficult sometimes for me to get out there, especially on tournament days when you're out there 7, 8 hours, you're getting up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're driving 2 or 3 hours to get to the lake, and then you get there and you're pedaling and paddling and you're exhausted. So the motor really was kind of born out of that. I went with a motorized kayak because at the time I was putting forth a lot of physical effort all week long, and then to go and put forth that same amount of effort on the weekends just to do what I wanted to be doing was really taking a toll on me. So the Nucanoe is a great solution for that because with a Nucanoe there's no retrofitting, there's no nonsense. You want to put a trolling motor on it, you put a trolling motor on it, no big deal. So let's actually start with that. When I originally did the video, I started from the front, but we're going to start from the back and we're going to work our way forward, right? So here's the trolling motor. That is a Minn Kota Endura C230, I believe. It is an Endura, it is a 30-pound, whether it's the C2 or not, I don't really remember, to be honest with you. It's a $100 trolling motor. For $100 you kind of can't go wrong. 30-inch shaft, which means that it's not too long for a kayak, obviously, so you don't have to do any kind of cutting or anything like that to make it fit the boat. The one thing that I did find that was a little bit annoying, just for me, this wouldn't probably be for anybody else. Previously I had a water snake, a 54-pound trolling motor, and the unit down here was actually large enough that I could put my transducer on it like you would mount on a bow mount, but with this skeg here and the size of this overall design for the Minn Kota, you're not fitting my transducer down here. So I did have to think of another solution for that, come up with another solution to get that mounted. But other than that, I'm relatively happy with the motor. I will say that going from a 54 down to a 30 does have some consequences. You're losing thrust. Thrust equals torque, basically, in the boat motor world. So what ends up happening is you lose some ability to cut through some vegetation. You lose some ability to push against the wind. And reverse is, I'm not going to say useless, but reverse is a lot slower and a lot less usable than it was with the other motor. Other than that, no real issues to speak of. The one good thing about dropping down to a 30 is there's significantly less power use over the course of the day, and that keeps me out on the water even longer. Attached to that motor is a Helmsmate tiller extension with a universal joint. If you're going to run a transom mount motor, get the universal joint. This is 100% necessary in my opinion. Nobody wants to be steering their boat like this, right? You don't have to be reaching way out to the side to try to steer where you want to go. That completely mitigates the need for that with the universal joint. The other great thing, as you can see, is that it extends all the way up and it rests on my seat. So when I'm fishing, standing up here, I can very easily just reach back behind me, click, click, steer where I need to go, readjust the boat, whatever I need to do, set it right back down, and go right back to fishing. So, it's $65, I think, for one of these guys, but it's $65 very well spent, especially when you only spent $100 on your motor. So that worked out pretty well. Onto my tackle storage, which right now is an absolute mess, as you can see. I kind of just threw everything in there. This is like a double-sized milk crate. I managed to get this from my old job. That has worked out a lot better for me than the crate that I previously had, just because I have more space, and we as anglers obviously like to have lots of options when we're on the water, especially fishing tournaments. You never know what type of situation you're going to run into, and you're going to want to change things up quickly on the water. So being able to carry all that tackle has been pretty important. Generally my soft plastics and stuff, and like this is like a bag of this is like a bag of stuff that I haven't even touched yet. This is all new stuff that hasn't ever even left the package. Everything just goes in Ziploc bags most of the time. I might get back to using like Plano boxes or something for my soft plastics, which is what I used to do, just because it is a lot neater and a lot more organized. I zip tied rod holders onto the crate. You know, there are a lot of guys out there that run Hobie H crates or black packs, you know, Yak Attack black pack or something like that. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not spending $125 for a plastic box that I have to put together once I've got it. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. You can get a milk crate way cheaper. some $5 rod holders from Walmart, and some zip ties. And then you can move the rod holders around however you need to. Now in the Nucanoe, you'll notice this guy right here, I just kind of slapped this on haphazardly the other day. That should be riding up a little bit higher because it's bumping against this part of the boat here. But when I took this crate out and put it in my Perception when I was having some issues with the old motor, and I went back to using my pedal drive for a little while, I had to rearrange the way the rod holders went because it didn't fit in the tank wall of the Perception the way that I had it set up. So all I had to do was clip all the zip ties, rearrange the rod holders, and everything worked perfectly fine. I like having that ability. Also, with the rod holders and the zip ties, I'm able to angle them out, and this becomes super important with this guy right here. If these were sitting straight up, the rods would be right here. I wouldn't have much room to move this tiller extension around. So with the tiller extension and the rods angled out, I can actually turn this pretty much all the way side to side, believe it or not, and get some really good mobility out of the boat. I can pretty much turn the thing on a dime in place almost. So yeah, the crate, in my opinion, again, just going with a standard milk crate and like I said, zip tie some rod holders on it in the configuration that you want them, it works pretty well, and it's pretty inexpensive. My Plano boxes and stuff, which I have more that I typically bring out with me, they generally just sit right up here, leaning up against the crate. My crankbaits, my big swim baits, all that stuff's still in the truck. I usually just throw my hog trough on the other side of the rod holder over here. It's out of the way. It's not an issue, and that's pretty much just where it lives. Tools on the seat here, right? So these little holes in the Pinnacle seat, which the Pinnacle seat, I actually really love having a swivel seat, guys. If you don't have a swivel seat on your kayak, you're really missing out. And there's only a few manufacturers doing this right now that I know of, Nucanoe being one of them. I believe Pelican, you can get the Power 100, which isn't technically a kayak. I guess it's a small boat. But the Power 100, I believe, has a swivel seat. And then now I've seen that new Apex Tier, that new Eric Jackson carbon fiber, ridiculous 30-pound kayak has a swivel seat. But that thing's like 11 grand. So, sorry, EJ, I don't think I'm going to be picking up an Apex. I'm not that rich. Which you clearly stated it's not for everybody, and I understand that. The guys that can afford it, more power to them. I'd really love to see that thing with a motor on it, though, and see if that hull actually planes out. So get some video of that up, and you might convince me to spend that much if I rob the bank or something. Ram mount rod holders. I like these little ram mount rod holders. I did not buy these. These came with the kayak when I bought it. Again, I bought this used. This is a 2012, and I bought it from an older gentleman who was not really wanting to drag this thing around anymore. Basically, it was in really great shape when I bought it, and I have used it probably, I would say, infinitely more than what he did. So I've just about destroyed the thing in the like 2 years that I've had it or whatever it's been. So the Pinnacle seat, again, I really like a lot. There is a common problem with the Pinnacle seats with this fabric, the stitching tearing. This is still the original fabric. I have a new one somewhere in the house. I don't even know where it is at this point. I didn't replace it because at the time I was actually borrowing this seat from a friend to see if I wanted to buy it from him or not, and this happened. So I immediately hit them up. I immediately got a replacement for it, but I did also notice that it's not really affecting the seat overall. I can still tighten the straps up and everything, and it sits up firm just like it's supposed to. Whoops, hey, we're making lots of noise. It sits up firm just like it's supposed to and provides relatively good support. It's a pretty comfortable seat. It dries pretty quickly, which I really like. If it gets wet, you know, if it rains or something like that, you're not sitting in a sopping wet seat all day. Moving forward, let's see, we've got the transducer mount, right? This is a Scotty transducer mount. I went with the Scotty because I don't really like the switchblade. I know that's kind of like everybody's go-to. I'm not a fan. A buddy of mine's got it. Don't really like it very much, and I especially don't like it for the price. The Scotty was way cheaper. It's just as effective. This particular one gives you the option of having a mount if you wanted to put a rod holder or a screen mount or something like that. Here you can. It also comes with a little track. I think they didn't give me screws for it. I think I had to provide screws for it, but really easy. You know, you just drill little pre-drill holes, a little bit smaller than your screws. Before I sunk the screws in there, I dropped a little latex caulk in there, not even outdoor or anything like that, just standard latex caulk just to help seal up the holes a little bit. And this thing works great. It swings all the way up out of the way when I need it to. If I'm going through a bunch of vegetation or something like that, I don't want to be dragging it on the side of the boat. It does obviously make a little bit of noise when it's in the water, when you're running at a higher speed or something like that, which any of them are going to do. I don't really have a drag issue or anything like that with it. I don't find that if I'm paddling the boat that it's pulling the boat to one side. I like this mount overall. I think it cost me like 25 bucks, 30 bucks. I don't remember. I got it on Amazon. I might throw a link down in the description for that. We'll see if I can go back and find that, put it up. In keeping with the electronics now, let's talk about the screen. So a lot of people go out and they spend money on a screen mount. I didn't want to do that. I thought it was dumb. There was absolutely no reason to do it. On my perception, my bail mount was literally just screwed into the top of one of the two hatches on either side in the front, and then my battery lived inside. I love that. That was great. With this particular setup, with the Nucanoe, you don't have storage hatches or anything like that aside from the one up front. I wanted to be able to keep the battery accessible and still keep it relatively protected. And I also wanted to keep the screen in a good position and not have to spend an arm and a leg to do it. I wasn't looking to spend $60 or $70 on a screen mount. So what I did instead was I just drilled a hole in my existing Garmin bail mount and then put a track bolt in it and put a standard size nut that fit the threading on the bolt just to hold it in place. This made it so that it was low profile. You don't have the the big top of the track bolt getting in the way of the wiring for the electronics or anything like that, and it works very well. When I want it out of the way, I swing it up out of the way, and it's not a problem. When I want it accessible, it goes here. It's fully adjustable, obviously, just like any screen in a bail mount would be, so I can see it from where I'm sitting. I can see it if I'm standing. No issues. Super cheap, because I didn't have to buy anything. So my battery for the electronics is in a little nonsensical $10 watertight box from Walmart, which I just drilled a little hole in with a spade bit. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to buy a cell block. You don't have to do all that. Yeah, granted, I got a little bit of wiring sitting here on the deck. I don't really care. It saved me a whole bunch of money, and it was a pretty easy solution. Talking about battery boxes, this is also like a $10 marine battery box from Walmart. It serves its purpose. It says that it takes up to a 27M. I have a 29 size battery in there. 29 size battery with a 30-pound motor will keep me out on the water for like 2 days on a full charge. So keeping that in mind, I mean, you spend the extra, I think the 29 size was literally only $10 or $15 more than the 27, and I got, I believe it was 15 or 20 more amp hours out of it. I don't know, I'll have to look all that up. But anyway, battery box sits right up here, electronics battery box sits in front of it, and my net rests right on top there. So my net is always out in front of me. I don't like putting my net behind me. I don't ever want to have to reach behind me when I'm fighting a fish up here, right? That's not a good shout. The fish is up here. The net's always in my field of vision when I'm fighting fish. So all I got to do is reach out in front and grab it and net my fish. And you can see also that I just kind of keep my paddle in two pieces. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time, I'm running with the motor. The only time the paddle comes out is in an emergency situation where maybe my battery has not been charged and I'm running out of juice or something like that, or if I want to pull the motor up and get into some really thick stuff that I'm not going to be able to break through with the trolling motor. I know that a lot of guys have different solutions for anchor trolleys and stuff like that. You can buy anchor trolleys, which a friend of mine actually bought me a trolley, and oh well, look what I did here. Well, that was dumb. I guess when I put my seat on the last time, I don't use my anchor trolley that much. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't really use an anchor a whole lot with a kayak. And I guess when I put the seat on the last time, I put it on over the trolley line. So all I did was I took the line that came with the trolley kit that my buddy bought me, and I had these little clips already, which I just ran the line through the clips, clipped them off to the tie points that already existed on the boat. This is actually the tie point that the handle attaches to, which I actually prefer to use this piece of rope here. It's a little bit sturdier. One of the handles actually, the rope actually pulled out on it, and I had to retie it. It busted out of one side. So, but this works pretty well as a trolley. It does typically sit on the inside of the gunnel, which is not normally what guys do with trolleys, but it keeps it out of the water and it keeps it from banging on the side of the boat as I'm moving. And then when I actually want to use it, if it was not up under the seat right now, you would see that this part of the trolley will actually flop onto the outside. And then when I anchor, typically, and that's actually in here, when I anchor off, I didn't even break the anchor out. It's still in the back of the Jeep. I've gone with kind of an old school kayak guy solution. I use a retractable dog leash. This was $5 at Harbor Freight. It's 24 feet long and it's made for medium-sized dogs. It will hold your kayak. It is a pretty thick line, as you can see. Here, if I pull it out, it's a pretty thick line. And it actually works pretty dang well. So what I'll do, And I also use like a little 5-pound claw anchor, which again is kind of standard protocol. A little 5-pound claw anchor with the collar. But I'll take this dog leash, and I put that up under the seat, not necessarily in this position, and then run it through here, right? And then run this line through the ring of the trolley over here, over there. And then we're anchored off, we're through the trolley. We can change the positioning of the anchor from front to back. And I've got this readily accessible right underneath the seat in case anything were to go wrong. I can unclip it, give myself a little bit of length if the boat's hung up, starting to tip over or something, which has never happened. But in case it did, it's right there and easily accessible. I like this option. There's not a bunch of rope piled up. Just what I originally had when I had my anchor is I had a straight 25-foot anchor line that would just be tied off to a cleat and have a pile of rope sitting in the boat. So in order to avoid that and make it a little bit cleaner, that was the solution that I went with. You'll also notice that my wiring for my trolling motor is, well, this is like the type of wiring that you would use in like a home electrical situation. This is not typically the fine like multi-strand that guys are using to wire up trolling motors. This was what was readily accessible to me. I ran down the street to Home Depot and picked this stuff up, and I got 6-gauge because at the time I was running a 54-pound motor. Now a 54-pound motor at full draw is going to draw 54 amps. When you're taking current over distance, which, I mean, the distance isn't really that great here, it's about 8 feet, but I wanted to overdo it a little bit because when you're taking current over distance, you want to make sure that you account for that in the thickness of your wiring. You need the conductivity to be able to handle that amount of power. If you have a smaller gauge wire, it's not going to be able to handle that much, and you have a really good chance of burning that wiring up. So I overdid it a little bit on the wiring. Originally with a 54-pound motor, I also have a 60-amp breaker, which needs to be dropped down now that I'm using a 30-pound motor, because we're only drawing about 30 amps at max draw. And with a 60-amp breaker, rather, you run a risk of possibly still burning your motor up on an overdraw, just because the breaker's still good. The breaker's not going to trip before the motor burns up. So that is something that's on my list of things to do. Other than that, I mean, talking about the motor again for just a second, just because I didn't mention it, I just got a piece of particle board shoved in here. I do have the 2-piece Nucanoe transom protector for the electric trolling motor. I only use one piece of it typically because I really don't even know where the other piece is. A buddy of mine gave it to me, and I end up really just using the particle board more than anything. I've done no damage to the back end of the boat by having the trolling motor resting on the back of the boat. I don't really think it's 100% necessary. I do think that you should put something on the inside to protect the transom from the metal here, but other than that, I don't see a problem with it. I haven't had any issues, and I've been running it this way for well over a year at this point. So I think I'm going on 2 years. Am I going on 2 years with this thing? I don't even know at this point. I think I'm going on 2 years with this boat now. So this is a 2012 again, if I didn't mention that before. This is the original iteration of this boat. Now, I love this boat a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I also hate this boat a lot. This is probably my favorite kayak that I've ever had, and also my least favorite kayak that I've ever had. Now, I say that because there were some issues in the design originally. It's a great idea with a little bit of a poor execution. Now, this is nothing on Nucanoe. I understand that when they first brought this product to the market, it was a new idea. It was something that nobody had really done before, and you know, there's going to be some trial and error process to it, especially when you go from, you know, setting up a prototype and testing it out and stuff to people actually like long-term using it. There's going to be some things that happen. Now, unfortunately, what happened with this one, and I'm not 100%, I never got the real full story as to whether or not there was supposed to be support underneath the deck or not. Right now, there is a foam block that they sent me to help kind of correct this problem somewhat. But what you have, if you can see it, is a severe warping in the deck. Right? Now, that comes from apparently UV exposure and heat, from what I understand, that these decks being as thin as they are, because they are pretty thin for what they are, have some warping issues. Now, the big issue that I had was that standing on it with no support underneath it, the deck would sag. And the way this boat is designed, underneath there's these little recesses that go up into the hull. They almost look like little fingers sticking up, kind of, and those little guys have been punching holes, which you can see here. There's one forming there. One there, and they're all the way down the entire length of the boat. There's a crack right there. Every single one of them. Every one of them. And this thing is filthy. God, I gotta clean it up. But every one of them has started to punch through the deck. Now eventually I'm going to run this boat into the ground because the deck is going to start splitting everywhere and I'm not going to be able to use it anymore. And that, to me, is a big issue. There's a trade-off, though, because there's no other platform like this out there. So supposedly some of these issues have been worked out. I know that guys were having this problem as recently as last year, 2019 models. Whether it's really been fixed or not, I can't say. What I can say is that I don't have another option out there as far as being able to just slap a trolling motor on a boat, having this wide of a beam, this type of stability, and being able to carry this much stuff. You're just not going to find that in any other boat, really. There are some other manufacturers out there that do some things like the swivel seat, like I talked about. There's some other manufacturers out there that you can affix motors to their boats, but most of them require some kind of retrofitting or a proprietary product in order to put the motor on the boat. And I don't like that. I like being able to just slap the trolling motor on and go. So that would probably be just about it. If you're interested in a Nucanoe, I say definitely give them a look. If you want to have a motorized kayak setup, I don't really think you're going to find a better scenario. Me and a buddy have been over it again and again and again and again and just can't find anything better. That's why I'm still running a Nucanoe. So they're doing it the best right now as far as motorizing a setup, getting yourself out on the water in as cheap a manner as possible. Don't get me wrong, there are some other companies out there, again, that do make kayaks that are set up to take motors and things like that, but then you have to buy additional products in order to do that. I don't appreciate that whole a la carte kind of deal. I like being able to buy my hull, buy my motor, slap it on, and go. So yeah, you guys have any questions, any comments or anything like that, drop them down below. I'll try to get some of the products and stuff that I have here listed in the description down below, get some links up to that kind of stuff. If you guys want to try to pick up some of these things, I'm not sponsored or getting any money or anything like that. I don't have internet marketing links or anything like that, so it's not going to help me at all. I'm really just looking to help you guys out. Anyway, I guess that's about it. Thanks for sticking with me this long. I'll catch up with you next time. Peace.